Right then. Hello, everyone. Hope you're well today. Let's see, who have you got online? I have got John Shea. Hello. Well, I'm going to try and experiment on something quickly. I have a small update. I'm not sure if it will work, so I'm going to be very careful. But I do have a small update to add. Oh, thank you, Osprey. I'm not sure what you said, but the live chat figure has just flexed up. But I was just getting something out to show everyone. Let's see. And that one. Not sure if this will work. Yeah, it does. So,
as you can see, the houses are going up. This one is my sister's. She gets the one facing the house.
Not sure if you can hear what this is currently saying, but it is kind of a fun one.
Nice space.
What can I say? This is the office. This is what we're currently putting up, and this is what I'm going to be soon relocating to once we've got it fully assembled. As you can see, it's only quite small. Yeah, designed by a civil engineer. They don't do things small. Hello, John Shea. Anna. Can you say about small award about your yelling that you mentioned in 32 or 33? Since I think even my speech bug out, all the audio went off, so I can get all it. But still, yeah, we'll not go there. But yeah, I have received an award in the past for being quite loud. Basically, anytime anyone needs someone to be loud, I'm usually called upon for organizing things. John Shea, I agree with you. If I get knocked on the door by tax service, census people, or blue uniforms, it is Calvin Gasberg's and Dunrick and Hammer's faults. I do enjoy that. Hello, Peter Dawson. Hello, Kahedron. Hello, Osprey28. Hello, Concentrationist. Sadly, my iron brew has been lost in my mail. Osprey28, I would go and start checking the postman down. They might have nicked it. Thank you, Stafford. Thank you, Nautical Wolf. Shane F. Good evening, everyone. Hold my roaring log burner for cold, windy night Ooh, very atmospheric. Hello, Wayne Borean. Hello, Roland Cash. Hello, Martina Henry. Hello. DGB40. Hello. Hello, Schleppy42. Hello, Sadmiral. Hello, Wayne. Well, Wayne Borean. Ooh, Eric Kaufman. Aviator Enterprise. Cool. Hello, JT Leviathan. I don't think I've seen you before. Hello. Captain C4. Hello. And let's see. Wayne Borean, hi Doc. Have you ever seen the Book of British Naval Officers? It's an interesting resources. I think I have. I think I've got it somewhere in one of my boxes. This is the trouble with having half my books. This is why I'm looking forward to being in there, because the amount of bookshelves I'm going to get out. I'm keeping these bookshelves. Don't get me wrong. They're not moving anywhere. They're staying in here. The only bookshelf coming with me is this one. Building a whole new set in there so I can have the books. Basically, I condense from all the work offices out and on shelves so I can find them rather than keep digging through every single box known to mankind to hunt stuff down. And Jemek, are you sure, Doc, that all the books will fit in there? Well, you see, the office this end is my sister's office, and she keeps saying that when it comes back to the regular teaching, she won't be using it anymore. And I'm sort of going, well, I don't do regular teaching yet, so yeah, that'll become my archive. But she doesn't like that, no. She doesn't like me to say that. Constantine, I hope the hut has some measures of climate control. It will have. They're going to be fully electrified, and they're going to have electric heaters in them. And they're going to be fully insulated. There is a huge amount of insulation waiting for them. Oh, Michael Drew, writing an essay for English class at the same time. Good for you. Don't put my hair on right. Yeah. Hello, Mateo Slavic. Dragmel, who lost the fight with Lawnmower? Yes, I did last week. Seriously, you saw me on. We recorded bilge pumps, and my hair was like this. Don't know. I'm confused. That isn't even. It's not a train wagon. Is it a decoy? It's what I currently have. Although, let's be honest, it doesn't look too dissimilar to a train wagon. Oh, but no, it's a fun space. Hello, Lionheart X-Ray, and hello, John Shea. Yes, Drac has arrived. He's here to check I don't go too nutty with this. I think he's worried where it's going to go from. So, today is the live for the Great White Fleet, and as you know from the Long Patrol, I take a slightly different tack when I'm evaluating it than others do, because I'm looking at it as a presence mission. And yeah. It's fun. It's a fun thing. You had a headset on then, though. Joint videos? Yes. Outside office, we will do. We can do joint videos using that space once it's all set up. It's going to have full landline and all sorts of things that we can use to do some recordings if we fancy it, and full outdoor access. How's Tom Godding? Hello, William Cox and Joshua Peters. And Inca. Hair seems to have lost his bow. Yes, it's the only bit I'm sort of slightly worried about. I think I went a bit nuts on the top, but I think they managed the rest to get okay. It was okay. Good afternoon, Blue Shirt Butter. It's a good time. It's a good time. Good luck, Staff Thompson. Although I might be borrowing Drac, actually. He doesn't realise this, but he might be, depending on what's happened tomorrow with the construction of the sheds, Drac might be getting called up over the weekend to help me with some more work for them. So, I'm going to start off today in the only way that you really should start off the Great White Fleet. And I'm going to start it off with one of Theodore Roosevelt's own books. And I saved this. I didn't use this in the Long Patrol specifically because I wanted it for $4 Live, because I wanted to make it... How'd I put this? I wanted this to be seen in the illustration of what it was. I wanted it to set the scene. And the point is that when we consider when the Great White Fleet goes around the world, this is one of the books which has been shaping his thinking from the beginning. It's published in 1901. It's the naval operations of the war between Great Britain and the United States, 1812 to 1815. Originally published in London first before it's published in America. It is one of the most interesting books he does, and it's been reprinted. Afternoon, Jeff Beeler. And I am reading what is technically pages 284 to 290. But technically, I'm not the whole of 284. So it's about 5 and a bit pages. The war had ended, and the treaty left matters precisely as they were before the war began. Yet it would be idle to say that, for either side, the war was not worth fighting. To Great Britain, it was probably a necessary incident of the Napoleonic struggle, for neither the British statesmen of that day nor the people whom they governed realized either the power or the rights of the United States. To America, it was certainly a necessary prerequisite for attaining the dignity and self-respect of a free nation. The war left enduring memories of glory and courage and love of country, which more than made up for the loss of blood. Moreover, the war taught certain lessons which should have been, although perhaps they were not, well pondered by the statesmen of the two countries, and especially by those who had or have to do with shaping the national policy of either. Just to make sure it's obvious, this is from this book. It's an Elblong Classics reprint. Nations must be prepared for war. Lack of preparation, laxness in organization invite disasters which can be but partially repaired. The successes of the American cruisers show that no power can afford to lull itself to sleep by dream of invincibility. A nation should see that its ships are of the best and that the men who man them are trained to the highest point of efficiency. The terrific pressure of the British blockade on the American coast and the utter impotence of American to break it show that what has already been shown 10,000 times, that the assumption of a simple defensive in war is ruin. Success can only come where war is waged aggressively. It is not enough to parry the blows of the enemy. In order to win, the foe must himself be struck, and struck heavily. The sea power of the British, the unceasing pressure of the British fleet, very nearly made the struggle a victory for Great Britain. But the triumphs of the American squadrons on the lakes and of the frigates and the sloops on the ocean, and the ruthless harrying of the British trade by the American commerce destroyers, inflicted such severe punishment as to make the British more than willing to call the fight a draw. The man who is anxious to learn the lessons of history aright, and not merely to distort them, for the gratification of his national pride, will do well to study the differences in comparative prowess shown in the single ship fighting of the Americans, British and French, in 1780, 1798, and 1812, respectively. Readers of history, on turning to the single ship contest of the War of the American Revolution, will be struck by the fact that the British ships were then markedly superior to the American, whereas the difference between the former and the French was very slight. In 1798, the year in which America had a brush with France, a great change had taken place. At that time, America had been forced to make reprisals at sea against the French, and 3 single ship contests took place. American ships won twice against antagonists of inferior strength, and in a third case, an American frigate fought a draw with a more powerful French frigate, which some time afterwards was captured by a British frigate no stronger than her former American antagonist. Compared with their relative position in the preceding war, the French had fallen very far behindhand. And while the British had kept their position of primacy, the Americans, leaping forward, had passed the French, and were close behind the leaders. In 1812, the relative position of the English and the French remained unchanged, but the Americans had forged still further ahead, and were better than the British. Of course, there had been no change of national character or aptitude for the sea during this period. Similar facts were that, in the War of the American Revolution, the American ships were manned by officers and crews who were without the training of a regular service. And so, while occasionally individual ships did exceedingly well, and they often did very badly, the French Navy, on the other hand, was at a high point of perfection, with excellent ships and well-trained captains and crews. Throughout that war, in single ship fighting, victory normally lay with the heavier vessel, whether she was British, Dutch, or French. In the War of the French Revolution, all that had changed. The Revolution had destroyed the discipline of the French crews and annihilated the old school of officers. While the enthusiasm with which it inspired the men could not at sea, as it did on land, in any way take the place of a lack of years of thorough training. On the other hand, the Americans had at last established a regular war navy, and their ships were officered by men carefully trained to their profession. During the next dozen years, the French, constantly beaten by the British, were unable to develop an equality of prowess with the latter. And the British, accustomed to almost invariable victory over foes who were their inferiors, alike in gunnery and seamanship, neglected their own gunnery and sank into a condition of ignorant confidence that, even without preparation, they could pull through somehow. The small American Navy, meanwhile, was trained by years of sea service, including much scrambling warfare with the Algerians, and the American captains, fully aware of the formidable nature of the foe whom they were to meet, drilled their crews to as near perfection as might be. In such circumstances, they distinctly outmatched their average opponents, and could be encountered on equal terms only by men like Burke and Manners. The lesson from this is so obvious that it ought not to be necessary to point it out. There is unquestionably a great difference in fighting capacity, as there is a great difference in intelligence between certain races. But there are a number of races, each of which is intelligent, each of which has the fighting edge. Among those races, the victory in any contest will go to the man or the nation that has earned it through by thorough preparation. This preparation was absolutely necessary in the days of sailing ships, but the need for it is even greater now if it be intended to get full benefit from the delicate and complicated mechanism of the formidable war engines of the present day. The officers must spend many years, and the men not a few, in unwearied and intelligent training before they are fit to do all that is possible themselves and their weapons. Those who do this, whether they be American or British, Frenchmen, Germans, or Russians, will win the victory over those who do not. Please note that whilst there are many ways to interpret the language being used here, I would honestly interpret, having read the book, that basically Theodore Roosevelt says you're intelligent or not intelligent as a nation or a race as to whether or not you have a navy. If you don't have one, you're not intelligent. If you do have one, you are. Doesn't matter the logistics of having one or not having one. If you don't have it, you're dumb. I'm not trying to always agree with that philosophy, but as a naval historian, there is part of me which I have to admit does enjoy it. Doubtless it helps if the sailormen, the sea mechanics, as they are now, have the sea habit to start with, and they must belong to the fighting stocks. But the great factor is the steady, intelligent training in the actual practice of their profession. Any man who has had to do with bodies of men of varied race origin is forced to realize that neither courage nor cowardice is a purely national peculiarity. In an American warship of the present day, the crews are only of mixed race origin, somewhat over half being American-born, while amongst the remainder there are sure to be Scandinavians, Germans, men from the British Isles, and probably others, such as French Canadians or Portuguese. But the officers are sure to be drawn from all classes indiscriminately, simply because merit is not confined to any one class, and among the officers, those whose fathers came from Germany or Ireland will be found absolutely indistinguishable from their brethren of old Native American origin. The Annapolis education and the after-training have stamped the officers, and the conditions of actual sea service in modern ships under such officers have stamped the men with common likeness. The differences of skill, courage, application, and readiness will not be found to coincide with the differences of race. What is true of the ships of one sea power is as true of the navies of all sea powers. No education will fit a coward, a fool, or a weakling for naval life. But as a rule, the war fleets of great nations are neither commanded nor manned by cowards, fools, and weaklings. And among brave and intelligent men of different race stocks, when the day of battle comes, the differences of race will be found to be as nothing when compared with the differences in thorough and practical training in advance. You sit there and you listen to Theodore Roosevelt and his book, and you read some of the other history books during this time, and you really wish, I don't know, people in charge read their more history. It's just, hey ho. Draken Fanal, I have many hammers. Hello, Croat79. Right. Absaski, well, Bidwar and late by a newborn is demanding. Might drop out during the live as well. Good luck with the newborn. Congratulations. Well, I got pinged now that the live started. I'm not sure why it does that. Inca, officers be finished in Victorian battleship colours? Not quite. My mum is campaigning as it's her guard that's been taken over for a light eggshell blue. People can obtain this book free online if anyone is interested. You can, but It's not a digital copy is not a satisfactory to throw at people when they're being stupid. I'm not saying I buy multiple copies of this book and have them for whenever I go to a meeting where someone starts suggesting the phrases, why don't we cut the training budget, or can we save money in it? I would never waste a book, so. I have to say, I have been tempted a few times to use shoes. After I saw that, I thought, that could be a good idea. Right then. Jeff Hillam, this is good capsule history of the Great White Fleet. U.S. battleships and Navy battleships, 1895 to 1909, the Great White Fleet and the beginning of U.S. global naval power. It is a good one, but again, it's very focused on the ships, which is fine. I have to make this go a bit smaller, but it is very focused on the ships. Now, Paul from Chicago. It sounds kind of bad today, but when you compare Roosevelt to his contemporaries, he was incredibly liberal. Incredibly. Yes, he was. Compared to his contemporaries, he was incredibly liberal. And I do always point that out. But I'm also pointing out that, in his view, it's not really the thing that defines whether people are a good race or a bad race is whether they have a navy or not. We all have to rank the world somehow, I suppose. Shabby 42. Sounds like good old Teddy had a certain display from hubris. Oh, huge one. Reed Clark, Garden, G Gauge. Tempting. Jeff here, Teddy also oversaw the merging of the line and engineering officers' careers in the United States Navy. Yeah, he might have thought that he wanted senior officers who knew how to do engineering. That's good. You don't throw a digital copy at them. You attempt to bring the laptop it's contained on over their head. That would hurt the laptop, and I value the laptop more than that. John Rodriguez, I would say that reading history is important, but learning lessons in history is key. There is a very nuanced lessons throughout the history. Yes. Where's go? He was a product of his time, like anything difficult. Reach out to me on Discord if you want to chat about it in depth. And Leviathan. Let's see. What's Leviathan say? Message retraction from JT Leviathan. Yeah. Well, Eric Kaufman, congratulations on getting the job. I know it took you 12 minutes, but that's still 12 minutes of good, worthwhile time. And, yeah, in US Navy, spent about half the book talking about how the ships were used and the cruise itself. Talks about logistics and politics too. Oh, cool. I'm kidding. John Adams. Yeah, I think John Adams kidding about Navy then. Yeah, I know. Jeff, I do understand it, but I'm not. We'll see. Right, so the Great White Fleet. Now, it's a nickname for the 16 battleships, 2 of which were replaced after the first leg before going on their own one. So, really, it's sort of 18 battleships, and it's quite a lot of chunk of what Theodore Roosevelt is talking about. Walking softly, carrying a big stick. And as I said today, the reason we're doing it today, and the reason I did the videos came out on the 12th, the reason today is they stayed left Rio de Janeiro. So today was when lots of people were waving goodbye, go have fun. One of their few stops which wasn't in the British Empire. Now, I'm going to point this one out quickly here when we get to the route. We're going to talk about it more. The amount of people whose comment to the other ones have been going, oh, well, they didn't stop in the British ports because they didn't want to be seen next to the British Navy. Well, going to Britain to be seen by the British Navy next to the British Navy is annoying. But if Britain had wanted, they could have sent the whole fleet down to Gibraltar and met them down there and be photographed taking them through the Atlantic. Neither side wanted to do it. Britain didn't want to embarrass America, and America didn't want to try and wasn't there to provoke Britain. They were there to support Britain in some respects. And I would argue that the Great White Fleet and this diplomacy isn't a competition over first place. In 1905, everyone knows who first place in the world is. It's very simple. They're big. They have a red, white, and blue flag. They answer to, well, a king just about this point. And they like to sing God Save the King as their national anthem. It's called Britain. However, people don't just fight over first place. Usain Bolt, when he ran or was at his peak, just because he was winning every race going, didn't mean other people didn't show up. Yes, most of those people were about a foot smaller, and frankly, they were sort of going, "Hello, Usain," and Usain was going, "Hello." But they still showed up. They were fighting for second place and third place because it matters. It matters. Have you ever seen the way politicians scramble over political appointments? Okay. Look at the fight for vice presidential nomination in the United States and the way it's seen as a gateway to the presidential nomination. Same with Secretary of State. In the UK, who's in the cabinet, who's not in the cabinet. It's one of the most powerful things the Prime Minister has, because the moment they nominate someone to the cabinet, they're basically endorsing, they're giving a chance to show how good they are, which means that they're raising their profile enough that they can eventually challenge them for Prime Minister. It's the same with the Great White Fleet. The Great White Fleet is not about first place. It's about showing America's arrived on the world stage, and most importantly, it's about driving home the thing that America is not a bottom rank power. Basically, this is America saying to France, "Can you match us?" To Germany, "We are prepared to invest. We are investing. We are building." To Japan, "We're here. Let's try and make this friendly," but in a sort of very patronizing way in some respects. It's a fun thing. I would also argue that the Great White Fleet is well managed diplomatically, because it's not just about the fleet. Roosevelt is very careful about the diplomats he has in places where the fleet is going to visit. He has diplomats who are able to use subtlety. That's one of the things I always find about Roosevelt, is that his whole reputation is this big personality, this big president, this overwhelming presence. And yet he's also so good at nuance and subtlety. And you read his book, or read the Hendricks book about him, which I've used for a lot of the research which have gone into this. They will explain so much about Roosevelt as a foreign policy president. And he's good. Right. Anonymous, what are we to do when China does its version of the Great White Fleet? That'll be a question when we see it happen, but probably have to respond inclined. But I'd argue that if you look for a nation which is currently doing the Great White Fleet, well, which nation is about to deploy a full-blown carrier battle group, which might well there is now talking about potentially adding more ships to that group, including amphibious ships with a hefty marine presence to show of a global deployment of a task force. Britain's saying it's back and saying it's not a minor power, it's a global power. It's not a superpower. No, I'm not making those claims. And you see, that's the point. America, when it's sending the fleet around, is not making the claim that it is a superpower or even the first global power. It's making the point it's a world power. And how do I put this? So, we always talk about the superpowers up the top, and everyone obsess about them. But really, what's more interesting is the medium powers, the powers below that level, because they form into about 3 different categories. You have a global power, which is a power which can reliably get everywhere, whenever it wants to. It's not a superpower, but its military might be a lot smaller than the superpowers, but it can get them everywhere. Whenever it wants to. A world power, which can reach when it's got the equipment available, has the capacity to reach everywhere in the world. And a regional power, which has the power to only affect its region. So there are sort of 3 levels of medium power. Global is constantly able to affect around the world, is constantly able to move forces around the world. Basically goes, you want to, we go. Because to be a superpower requires overwhelming nuclear weapons, but a superpower isn't necessarily a global power or even a world power. I would argue, actually, that Russia and China at the moment, with their current levels of logistical support, if they were not, and forces, if it was not for their overwhelming size and nuclear arsenal, would probably be considered world powers, not global powers. So, one of the interesting things I did when talking about this was I wanted to talk about his walk softly and carry a big stick mentality. We're going to get into this sort of as well at this point. Sal Malicano. Hello, Sal. The Great White Fleet was also not afraid to highlight failures: lack of cruisers, destroyers and auxiliaries, reliance on coal pushed Navy towards oil, need for Panama Canal, and demonstrate US ability to defend its empire. Yep. And they did drink tea. Jeff Miller, the US Navy sent Maine and Alabama around the world on their own after they were fixed their boilers, and they arrived home before the rest of the fleet. So 18 battleships and all, as I said. They had 16 traveling in the main fleet most of the time, and then I point out the other 2. Else, yeah, 2 fleet carriers equals Britain and back. I'm not sure quite, but I think if they do end up going down the LHD route for literal strike ship, which keeps evolving, and it has ski ramps on, then I think Britain can say it's definitely back. JSL, was there a historical precedent to the cage mass, or were they supposed to be the next big thing on paper? Next big thing on paper. Shomak, Roosevelt strikes me as someone who projected a personality so people would underestimate. Yes. Some people really are big and buffoons. Other people project so that people don't realize what they're like underneath. It was walk softly and carry a big stick, actually, and there is a reason for it. It's often translated as speak softly, as modern is speak softly and carry a big stick, but it's walk softly and carry a big stick is what he originally gets to. And the reason I can say this is I can talk about his original paper. One interesting thing is when he starts talking about this later in his career, walk softly and carry a big stick, he talks about it in his speeches. He talks about it coming from an experience in terms of, well, in terms of, you know, an old saying. But he's earlier talking about it's something else. It's an old saying from India rather than from America. In car, British vehicle for showing off the RN fleet is a Spithead review. Yes and no. That's you always have to remember. Britain does a duality approach. Britain does do its global patrols and it has a global presence, and then it has the Spithead review for saying this is the whole fleet. This is what we can mass, and that's largely because no one wants to go to expense of deploying the whole fleet around the world. But they do have squadrons everywhere and they have presence everywhere, so that's why they don't need to do it in the same way. Hi, Jespy. JT Leviathan, could soft power help determine whether someone is a world or global power? Well, if their soft power means they have access to the necessary infrastructure through alliances to be a global power, then you can argue they are a global power. JP, I find it interesting that Kentucky and Kearsarge have no mentionable problems. Interesting compared their design of the Connecticut class, the latest design of the fleet. Yeah, I think that's possibly because they managed to get them working. They were at the right point of both practical technology and of experience to keep it working. Anos, there is a shocking black hole called WMD deterrence theory, e.g., why no chemicals used in World War II? No one really knows. We do know. There have been a lot of papers done on it, and it's mostly to do with the fact that both sides had them, but neither side wanted the other side to use theirs because both sides overestimated the other side's stocks massively. The Germans overestimated the British stocks due to a very massive British emphasis on pretending they had more than they had, and the British overestimated the German stocks because they believed that the Germans were lying. Jeff Teddy brokering the Treaty of Portsmouth is an important security of the Great White Fleet. Also, I not realized the idea of the voyage was kept secret from Congress. Not so much kept secret from Congress as Congress were ignored completely. It's completely. So, here is the first time Teddy is recorded as saying this. And if you don't take it there, don't mind on what I'm going to do. I'm opening it up far bigger because I can read it far more on a different screen. So I will be losing the visibility on the chat shortly. Right. Mr. Henry Elsprager, Mr. Henry Elsprager of the Union Club, and this is written in 1900, New York City. Dear Harry, your letter of the 25th really pleased me. Of course, I shall not feel real easy until the vote has actually been taken, but apparently everything is now all right. I have always been fond of the West African proverb, speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far. If I had not carried the big stick, the organisation would not have gotten behind me. And if I had yelled and blustered, so Parkhurst and similar dishonest lunatics desired, I would not have had 10 votes. But I was entirely good-humoured, kept perfectly cool, and steadfastly refused to listen to anything save that Paine had to go, and that I would take none but a thoroughly upright and sensible man in his place. Now, in this one, of course, he writes, speak softly and carry a big stick. Then, when he's talking about it later, he uses the phrase, walk softly and carry a big stick. And it depends also, it seems to, when he's talking about domestic politics and he's talking domestically, he's using the phrase speak. When he's talking about international relations, he's using the phrase walk. I haven't done enough study to be able to determine whether this is him using subjective phraseology to depend on his audience, or whether it's him focusing in depending on the whole kind of mission. In terms of he sees politics as more personal, transactional, and interaction on that phrase, and he sees international relationships more as sort of a presence and image scenario, because you can't have as many conversations, especially not this time, as you can with people, so you have to rely on people's impression of you to guide their thinking. But, you know, that's good. Rick Vasa, was an American ship sunk in Naples in World War II by Germans with gas aboard during the Italian campaign? Rick, honestly, possibly, but I honestly haven't done any checking on Naples in World War II as preparation for this particular video. When was the last time I taught the Italian campaign? I haven't taught the Italian campaign for a few months. I'm sorry, specifics on that one. There are a lot of American ships sunk. I'm not sure if any were sunk in Naples, but you know, that's a different topic. All right. So, what was the added colory? Well, there was an added Rooseveltian colory on the Monroe Doctrine. If I can find my note. Now, this stated, and it was declared in the 6th of December 1904 to Congress. So this is in 1904, year before the Battle of Tashima, the year before so many things happened, and about 4 or 5 years before the Great White Fleet is doing its thing around the world. All this country desires is to see its neighbouring countries stable, orderly, and prosperous. Any country whose people conduct themselves well can count upon our hearty friendship. If a nation shows that it knows how to act with reasonable efficiency and decency in social and political matters, if it keeps order and pays its obligations, it need fear no interference from the United States. Chronic wrongdoing or an impotence which can result in a general loosening of the ties of civilized society may in America as elsewhere ultimately require intervention by some civilized nation. And in Western Hemisphere, the adherence of the United States to the Monroe Doctrine may force the United States, however reluctantly, in flagrant cases of such wrongdoing or impotence, to exercise of an international police power. Again, this is tied into the Great White Fleet and also tied into the point I've been making about Germany. Roosevelt is not stupid. The British Empire are already in South America. There's nothing he can do about that. And the British are in the Caribbean. There's nothing he can do about that. Fighting that war will be massive and expensive. And you're talking about the man who literally wrote the book on the last time the Americans fought the British when the British were distracted. He's not really keen on repeating it. And remember, this book is published 3 years prior to that corollary. So what is he aiming at? Well, which power is behaving in a predatory fashion? There is a nation which is seeking place in the sun, which is offering lots of low interest loans, which look great, and their countries, when they can't when they can't pay them back, is basically sending its ships around. And that debt is one of the reasons why you end up with issues in China in the Boxer rebellions and various other things, because of the amount of loans going out from Germany. Now, here's the thing. America does not want colonial powers in South America if it can avoid them. It doesn't want any more than are already there, definitely. There are a couple there, they're annoying, but they can mostly ignore them. They don't want others, and they especially do not want aggressive ones getting into there. Aggressive expansionist ones are problematic. Ones which are fairly content with what they've got because they've already got a lot, they can deal with. In other words, they're worrying about Germany. Now, this is an interesting context because people would always point out and go, yes, but the Americans were so slow to get involved in World War I, and Germany was a European problem. Well, Germany wasn't really a European problem. In that any nation starts upsetting the international order and starts radically trying to change it and upturn the norms by force or whatever it means, has an impact on other nations around the world, whether they like it or not. Because international relations is so often based on precedent. And because what happens in one sphere can start being copied in another sphere by another power using that as precedent. British Empire pre-World War does not highlight many island colony stations worldwide. I'm fairly sure that's because they're such small dots of red, they don't really show up at this scale. Anos, your Monroe Doctrine was not about kicking Europeans out, but about keeping them out once they got kicked out, usually by others. There's a lot of involvement in the kicking out. A lot of money. You know I love you, but the Great White Fleet is aimed at farmers in the Midwest rather than Great Britain or Germany. I would argue it's aimed at a double. When you're doing something like this, it can be aimed at more than one audience. The actual launching of the fleet and the fleet going around the world, yeah, that's aimed at America to drive home the idea internally that America has power, that America has presence, that America needs to be there, and this is why. That's what that is. But the route, the shaping, and the foreign policy reason for it, because you don't just go to this expense just for domestic. It's got to be foreign policy as well, because here's the thing. Why would you need to project power there if there wasn't a foreign policy? You need to sell to your public that you need to project power to these places around the world, that you need to have this capability. But you have no need for needing that capability if there wasn't a foreign policy reason for requiring that capability in the first place. You don't need the capability just because of having the capability. It's all interconnected. It is the beautiful thing that is history. It is the beautiful thing that is the Great White Fleet as an example. Whenever I'm giving this lecture, whenever I'm talking about the Great White Fleet, it's one of those things I love to get into. That it is such a complex messaging platform. It's about global presence. It's about specific power deterrence. It's about relevance. It's about selling capability. It's about establishing status both at home and abroad within the mindset of the people at home. As I've said in Long Patrols, there is so many layers going on to the Great White Fleet that it is practically overloaded with, laden with them. JP, just for the record, the Great White Fleet visit included 7 destroyers visiting Shadraff ports. The cruisers stayed home with the old battleship to protect the United States. The destroyers only went round South America, with them, and they didn't cross the Pacific. Some cruisers did go halfway across the Pacific with them. Honestly, they didn't have that many cruisers or destroyers that were actually viable for this kind of operation. That's good. I think it's worth pointing out that a lot of the Central and South American guns were essentially puppet guns for US companies, like the United Fruit. Yes, the fact that United Fruit was basically the American version of the East India Company at this time does disturb me on some levels, because United Fruit sounds so much nicer in phraseology than East India Company. At least that sounds like it's there to take over a place. He doesn't. A couple of powers in South America: France, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain. Yes, but this is 1908, 1907, 8, and 9. Which of those would you call real powers at this point? Because is there a good book on the US-German incident in Samoa? I have read it. Almost triggered a war between nations. Not at them. Well, there might be one at the moment, but I haven't read it. But there's one I'm looking forward to coming out, which is being written by some of the academics at Annapolis. JT Leverton, was there any real European reaction to Monroe Doctrine? If you can enforce it, good for you. Basically, the only power which was really could really sort of budding up to it was the British, who had an informal empire in South America, and usually after the Spanish and the Portuguese were forced out, and frankly, they didn't care. They and the Americans got along well enough; it didn't matter much. That's good. And honestly, United Fruit would profoundly disagree. They essentially had their own army and would overthrow governments that harmed their profits and replace them with more compliant ones. Again, it's called United Fruit. They're about fruit. They should not be having an army. East India Company, you can... I don't know. Literal origin of the Banana Republic. Yes, I know, Grey Celsi. Reverse. I guess it boils down to how many nations could sail 16 battleships around the world at a time and do it successfully. Yeah. And there is a subtle thing going on here. If we go back to this sort of a thing, and we'll be talking about it shortly, they use British colliers to do this. Now, that says two things, if you think about it. One, it says that America needs to build its own capacity, which it does start to work on. But two, it says that as far as Britain's concerned, their presence wandering around the world stage is a good thing, and Britain's prepared to support it. Because if the British government hadn't wanted those colliers to take part, they wouldn't have taken part. It would have been entirely informal. There would have been a conversation between the Admiralty and Lloyd's of London, Lloyd's Register, the insurers. And then the insurers would have a conversation with the ship owners, and they would have found other jobs to go and do to make a profit. It would have been nothing written down, nothing visible, just done. So it happens, and the fact it happens shows that A, Britain quite likes having America on the world stage at this point, and B, Britain might have another ally coming through. So, we have the alliance with Japan. We have the Entente with France we're working on. And then we have a relationship with America. So that's the British side of the Great White Fleet. And another reason why the Great White Fleet doesn't visit Britain. Because that would be difficult. Because the British shows out the whole fleet, in which case it looks very small and underdeveloped. and could be seen as an offence, or Britain doesn't bring out the whole fleet and Britain looks like it's demeaning itself next to them. It would have been a very complicated scenario. But they visit a lot of British ports on the way round, and they use British colliers. In simple terms, this couldn't be a clearer endorsement by Britain of America being on the world stage than if Britain had personally, I don't know, sent them a ship to escort them round and gone, and just in case you get lost, I'm here as your friendly guide cruiser. Carl Harmon. Hi, Doctor. Thanks for the videos yesterday, Tuesday. Really helped me after losing my nan yesterday. I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm glad my videos help make you smile, but I'm very sorry to hear you lost your nan. Please accept my condolences. I'm British. My methodology of dealing with those sort of scenarios is to give you a cup of tea and a sort of one-armed hug, and that's about sort of as emotional as we really get. But I can't really do that over here. And a biscuit, of course. You should never forget a chocolate biscuit. So please have them virtually. That's about all I can do via this mean. Paul French Code. I thought the United Fruits Army was the US Marine Corps. Nah, that was the pre-recruited army. Vision. Last year I bought an old book on HMS Calliope, which was at submerging as German confrontation and hurricane. Yeah, that was fun. That's good. Talking about United Fruit is also on topic because they called their cargo fleet the Great White Fleet. Oh, they were so weird. Mm-hmm. Sail 16 battleships around the world and not find Japanese torpedo boats in the North Sea. Yeah, it was an amazing skill they'd have found on that one. Britain has a history of helping other empires maintain domination over certain regions, so they do not have to. Oh yes, it's one of the things that's so useful. Right, so let's talk about Teddy himself, and he's quite a cool person, and I did rather enjoy doing a chat about some of the things that in the discussion which I did for the questions, I went into the Bull Moose Party, and they were really, really interesting, the Bull Moose Party. If you've got a few minutes, do look them up. I'm not going to go into that today, but they were really quite cool. He has two wives, Alice Lee and Edith Caro, both very advanced, very intelligent, very well-known women of their time. Educated at Harvard University and Columbia Law School. Holds many political offices and sort of New York, including Governor of New York, as well as Assistant Secretary of Navy in his time. He was one of several Assistant Secretary of Navies that would come from the Roosevelt family. Has a Nobel Peace Prize awarded in 1906 for his work at the Treaty of Portsmouth, which of course ends the Russo-Japanese War. Served as a colonel in New York Army National Guard. Commanded the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry and fought in the Spanish-American War, Battle of Las Guasmas and Battle of San Juan Hill. I would say I don't think you produce leaders like him now. I don't think there is the opportunity to produce a person like him. He is a character. He is a complete and utter individual. He has served in a war, in a very active fight, and acquitted himself well and honorably. He's been and that was the peace negotiations. He went through multiple levels of government, but also served in the armed forces. When I was sort of going through his career and looking at what he was done, he you could almost describe him as Roman senatorial republic class, in that he switches between military career and political office as if it's the same thing, and on the side writes books and practices law occasionally, and writes articles in newspaper magazines, does all sorts of things. One thing he does seem to me is never poor, but hey ho. Carmen, I did drink a good mug of tea or two. It was close between that and Iron Brew. Well, as I said, wish I could do more. Hope there was plenty of biscuits there. There are various stories of what he did when he was, at certain points, attacked. He is... How do I put this? He is a character. He is a pure and utter character. And there is no one like him. He also does time as a cowboy in Dakota. He's just one of a kind. I cannot think. I have been for a lot of time trying to, because one of my things is, like I was talking about Supermarine and Tesla in the Supermarine videos, and sort of giving a comparison. I like to be able to give listeners viewers a comparison with someone who is present in the current day. There is no one who I can find who fits this. There are many who try and model themselves on aspects of Roosevelt, but the parts they model themselves on mean they do not understand the full Roosevelt. And I think that's half the trouble. I think a lot of people try and model themselves on the outer Roosevelt, on the public spokesman, the speaker, the orator, the person who gives this full-throated speeches that go on and drive the audience to applause, to listen, to think, and pushes all that, and they don't think about what was behind that. They see the pushed image, the image that goes out, this one, him on horseback, looking great in the distance. They don't see what's going on in there, behind the glasses. Mm. Mm-hmm. Sherlock. He was also once police commissioner for New York City. Yes, I've put that in there. I'm not sure he was police commissioner. I've got him as president of the New York City Board of Police Commissioners. He would walk around at night doing patrols to keep an eye on what the officers were doing. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Jermak, he was almost personification of USA at his time. From traveling west to being active on international team, USA at the same time was ending conqueror of the West. At the same time was the gold rush and all sorts of things. He's many things. George Bush Sr. had a somewhat similar career. Somewhat, but he doesn't publish the history books, and he doesn't do sort of that sort of thing. Again, with Reagan, I was trying to go for them, but I couldn't find them. Gross Housing, I think not being poor helps having the time to do all those things. Yes, but there's not being poor, and there's let's put it this way. Yes, he had the money to do those things, but he wasn't exactly annoying about it. Vision. Theodore Roosevelt's father brought his way out of the war draft. Theodore wanted to undo that shame. Oh, yeah. Tom Scotting. Bureaucracy, ultra-low tolerance to risk, PR, media management, and heavy HR style management really stop people like Teddy Roosevelt coming to public military prominence these days. I'm not sure. I wonder if perhaps social media and various other things will mean that will change. That it won't be the people who are projected, but it'll be the people who catch the public's ideas. Ian Carr, did Teddy Roosevelt know Churchill? Many similarities. They did. They knew of each other. They were around at similar times. Churchill was young when Roosevelt was older, but they were around and both interested in naval affairs. Hmm. Callum Gasman, Vladimir Fedoruk Putin is the closest character, albeit there are differences. There are massive differences, which why I haven't gone there, because in the nicest way, I don't think I don't think Putin has the subtlety of political rapier that Roosevelt enjoys. Alice did take after her father, Alice Roosevelt, his daughter by his first. His daughter by his first wife, definitely. Interesting point from Chicago. If Alice Churchill was a man, she would have been president, quite possibly. None ever won. Hello. The old saying, you can't replace the person, but some skill one has. Can. Skippy Africanus, I do think TR's handling of the Venezuela crisis of 1901-2 was good for US imperialism. Do you see this as a retreat for the British Empire by acceding to US arbitration resolution? The British didn't really want the... Remember, there was a British and German force there. The Germans were pushing to go. The British went to keep an eye on the Germans, and then the Americans allowed them to back out by taking the place. The British were quite happy. The British were more involved in Venezuela to stop the Germans getting in there, and that was one of the things the Americans were really worried about as well. So I see that as more as a time when Britain and America start to sort of looking at each other going, you know what, we could be quite useful buddies for each other. We thought we could be friends, but we could be quite useful buddies for each other. Oh, and Scipio Africanus, I think you left a comment about a 17-inch armed Italian battleship. I have no knowledge of that. I have been... this is off topic, I know, but you do keep leaving the comments and I haven't responded, so I'm feeling guilty. I have been going through pretty much every book I have which covers the Italian Navy and the Italian Navy's battleship designs. Naval architecture, the transactions, the warships, sort of after Washington and warships after London series by John Jordan, the Brassi's books, all of them, I can find no 17-inch armed Italian battleship. 15-inch, yes. No 17-inch. I don't think they had the capacity to do a 17-inch at the time. So they might have talked about it, but they don't seem to have anything actually in the Navy or anything on paper that they're actually building. So I'm not sure where it's been found. Teddy remained much more popular in public, even though Roosevelt openly despised that moniker. Jeff, I would point again there, I'd be very careful when it comes to Roosevelt of being sure that he despised something. I think, in terms of moniker, I think he realized that by probably being slightly off with it, in terms of it added to the incentive of people to call it by him. But it made his enemies call him by it, as well as his friends and his supporters. And the thing is, if you're calling someone Teddy, you're going to underestimate them too, aren't you? Carmel, was Teddy related to Theodore? The next one, next Roosevelt. Yes, he's his uncle. Right, and here are the officers he selects. He starts off with Admiral Robley Dullington Evans. And I would like to, while I'm going to talk this, I'm going to talk about the most Teddy event ever. When he's watching the Great White Fleet go out. He's watching them from the deck of the Mayflower, which is the presidential yacht. Okay? I want these back. I want there to be a royal yacht, and I want there to be a presidential yacht back. I think it would be really freaking cool to have government and national yachts back again. I think they are a critical part of diplomacy, and I think it'd be really, really cool. Also, that could be the next version of an arms race. Every nation racing to see how big and opulent their yacht could be. Okay? Anyway, leaving that to one side, Mayflower was supposed to just sit there and watch the fleet go out. And Roosevelt gets all caught up in his fleet going out, and he entreats the captain of Mayflower to follow them. And they do. And they only turn back at the end of the day because Roosevelt says, I have much more I need to do. Unfortunately, I'll have to trust this to fate. Now, I've only found one source which says that. But certainly they don't go with them for more than a day, and then they go back, and they weren't supposed to. And that does seem to be a cool idea to me. And when Evans gets ill, he can't. He's not well. Stillman Sperry takes over. Charles Stillman Sperry takes over. And frankly, the US Navy is well served with rear admirals at this point. They have really good rear admirals. And they're good. They're lucky that they have good officers to run that. They have a plurality of officers they can run with these, run this fleet, and keep it going well. Joshua Peters. Well, if the good doctor finds out his tea glows in the dark, we all know why. I don't drink tea, but if anyone messes with my own brew, then you will know about it. William Cox. Social media? Goodwin would have been Chancellor. Anos, Putin is very witty and highly intelligent. We have to speak Russian, no doubt, and I do. I would agree he is witty and highly intelligent. I just don't think he has that sort of subtlety. And when it comes to politics. I'd say that probably the Russian political system that he's grown up in has bred it out, has taken it out of him. But I think that the system has changed, and he now needs that subtlety. Jeff Shomak, the best way to ensure you're called something is to say you're annoyed by it. I did the same thing. Yes. Many have done it over the years. Let's give it everything else. 17-inch Italian ship was a comment from a 10-year-old that was having lunch with his mother. Mentioned the Outer class battleships spoke for a few hours. I recommend your channel to him. Thank you. And if Ace has got information about the 17-inch, I would love to look it up. Sounds like something off World of Warships, which is also why a 10-year-old brought it up. I'm not sure. 10-year-old. I know many 10-year-olds who are very, very advanced when it comes. Customers, you don't want to look too closely at the relationship between Teddy Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, and FDR. It's a bit creepy. We don't want to get in that. No. This is the America that period. Please, people marrying cousins is just, normal. Carmen, then that family should be presidents again. 2 brilliant presidents. And not just 2 brilliant presidents. I think it was about... I did the maths, and it was 5 or 6 assistant secretaries of the Navy. In fact, Frederick Roosevelt, FDR, had one of Teddy's sons and one of his other nephews as one of the Secretary of the Navy. I know it wasn't one of his sons. It was one of his nephews as Roosevelt, as Secretary of the State Navy. The Navy in the Navy from 1900 to 1950 is basically the Roosevelts. Whenever they're in charge, it's doing well. Anime sunglasses. Air Force One is new presidential yacht. I know, but you can't have a pool on it. Well, you probably could, but not a big one. Jack, build a nice superstructure in Mars with lots of antennas on a Burke hull and keep the landing pad back from Marine One and call it US Navy One. Ooh. 342. Yes, national yachts are cool, but you get people saying, why do you do this? Spend money on something useful. It is useful. Carmen, Type 23 refitted as a Royal yacht. It could be a cool idea. And yes, I know, that really is the most Teddy Roosevelt thing ever. It is. He wanted to go with his fleet. Then he wouldn't have needed an admiral. Jeff, the USN has none but Dewey, hired and rear admiral, don't they? At that time, they only have... They don't really have anyone hired on a rear admiral. They don't see the need for them. It's part of keeping the fleet young, the officer corps young in that respect. Samuel, when you look at the outcry from some when the RAF painted a Union Jack on a Voyager, can you imagine if a new Royal yacht was announced? Yeah, I should still do it though, as you say. Has Iron Brew sponsored you yet? No, they haven't. Rowan Cash, that is definitely a myth, but it's a cool one. We have here the USS Connecticut and the US Atlantic Fleet Steamway. And the whole point I made about the ships was, yeah, they're pre-dreadnoughts. Yes. There is dreadnought in the water. Yes, the Royal Navy has more of them coming off. Yes, even America, everyone's working on dreadnoughts. Does that matter to them showing up? No. Not a jot. Why? 18 of these things coming and turning up. That's a freaking lot of firepower. Yes, there's the Royal Navy in the world, which could wipe that out and still have, still with what half its fleet hidden behind its back. But that's the Royal Navy. That's like one navy in the world that can do that. The French, the Russians, there is no other navy in the world which would want to go toe to toe with that and wouldn't be going, hang on, how much are we going to lose? Or, ouch, they outnumber us because they can actually. Or in the case of the French hotels, that's not fair! They actually float and move and can fire at the same time. It's not fair if you can do all three things at once. It's not fair. We've got the really cool, innovative designs. They just basically copied the British and made an improved version of it. It's not fair. They're not being innovative. They're just going for something that works. And it's 18 of them, 16 of them sailing around together at any one time. That's just not fair. That's just being, that's just, that's unsporting. Designing ships that work. Grace Halsey, look up the super yacht Yaz, built in Abu Dhabi on the hull of the Dutch frigate HMS Piet Ing. I have to say, while we're just talking about Putin a bit, if look up, there is one clip I have which I think shows some of the qualities of Putin, in that he is getting presented with a puppy by one of the other strongmen in the region. And the man is handling the dog and is basically being rough with the dog. And Putin gets up, walks over, takes the dog off him. It is present for starters, and glares at the man in a way which says, "You've hurt the dog. Do not expect to see Monday." And you've never seen this big strong has been puppy going around going all that. Someone going, "Oh, sugar." So Putin, poisonous people, all these things, but at least he protects dogs, which in British terms is, we're less worried about what. Remember, in Britain, it is the Royal Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals and the National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children. I'm not saying we have our priorities in order, but we do have priorities. Hang on a second, there's a what? Sheppy 42. Yes, we know yachts are both cool and useful, but different people see the world differently. I know. That's wrong. Carmen, how's your office going? I did a little video at the beginning. It's probably should be built by Saturday, and then the electric should be put in next week. And then I will move the desk. I'm basically going to move these two pieces of furniture down there with me, and then I'm going to build everything else in there. So this chair, desk, this are what are going with me. The rest of the space is going to be built on site. Bar Foster. Indeed, it's amazing how much even a 10-year-old can know, especially with the internet now. I was about that age when I got to see the USS Alabama and USS Durham for the first time. Cool. Joshua Peters could do what FDR did with the USS Houston. Not a yacht per se, but a favorite ship that was outfitted with certain accommodations for the POTUS. That was a very sensible policy and a very useful policy for him to do. Ryan Cash, before the Great White Fleet got to port, did they have a repaint? I'm sure they're more of a muddy brown fleet after a journey of a distance. Let's put it this way. I'm fairly sure there was quite a lot of time when there were sailors over the side with paintbrushes on planks, suspended by ropes going, "How are you doing today, Frank? Really? Well, oh, that's good." What's your plans for tomorrow? Painting. This is why I hate gunnery drill. Every time we have it, we have to paint the ship. Which means first you have to clean it. It does get mucky. You know, it's the whole thing. Gahedron, and Dracmail, do you concur with Good Doctor's opinion on the French? I think I'm possibly being politer than he would be. Drax usually is. Annie Sunglass, as Click and Clack said, nobody copies the French, and the French don't copy nobody. Yeah. Peter Dawson, Royal Yacht Britannia was sent to Falklands as a hospital ship. Yes, and both Sandy Woodward and Michael Clapp were of the opinion, God help them if anything happened to it. There was a ranking priority of which ships you protect in the fleet. The carriers were supposed to dive in front of the Royal Yacht if anything was aimed in this direction. Oh, Ron Cash, there is something threshold about those curvy French tumble homes through Maine that maybe, but you know, they're lovely, but yeah. Donald Fritz, so the Great White Fleet was more of like a Sweet 16 for the US Navy. Here I am, here are my new toys, can I have a seat at the big white table? Not so much that as it was a announcement to the domestic and the international relations, international sort of crowd that they were there. Not a Sweet 16, more although Sweet 16 would be appropriate considering there were 16 usually in the fleet going around. More a 21st birthday. We're old enough to drink, vote, and do everything now. We're here. We're adults. You have to start paying us attention, or at least considering us in your discussions. Vision. Only first generation of French breed knots were really bad. Really bad. Later ships actually a bit better than the US battleships up to the Maine of post 1898 war building boom. Yes and no. Tom Scotting, I should say thank you for reading out my podcast idea in Belgium, Dr. Lark. It's a pleasure. As we've said on the podcast, we're going to work through all 9 this year. We are going the first 3 we're going to do in over January, February. I'm going to arrange them, and we've got Sal Mercago has already agreed to come along to them, take part in the ones, and we've got to find guests for other ones. Because it quickly dawned on us, A, these were very good quality, and B, whilst we have knowledge to discuss, it's not going to be the level of discussion which it deserves. So we need to have another expert along there to sort of bring in. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to have the proposer and we're going to have an expert for several of them. Carmen, when can we expect tribal class posters? Well, once I've got my office set up, I can then look into merchandising more properly, and I can start talking with Drac about that more. Because one of the things I have realized is he does have a lot of space in his home dedicated to it and supporting it, which I understand and I would like to follow, but I don't really have the space at the moment. So I've got to sort of build that up. Larry Schneider, just watched the clip with Putin and with the puppy. Makes Putin look good. Yeah. I also now suggested that would be my method if Biden wants to reset the relationship with Russia and perhaps get them on side with again, this is China. That's something Z would probably never think of. Give Putin a dog. The dog will be well looked after. He likes husky breeds. Big dogs. Carmen, do we save the car or the yacht? It's the yacht. Save the yacht, yeah. Basically, no one wants to say the yacht's been damaged. Brent Paulus, have you ever discussed anywhere things you would change about the Great White Fleet if you were in charge? I think I mentioned it in the question and answers session, and basically my point is I would like to have taken cruisers with them. I think they should have taken cruisers with them. I think they... we'll be getting into this in a second when I'll be talking about the other example from the pre-World War II, the first few decades, the World War One era sort of the 20th century, and yeah, I think cruisers would have been a really useful thing. Carmen, I love the Haynes manual about the Falklands, very enlightening. Yes, it is. Sinkets, hello, off topic, but had to check it out. Italian 7-inch guns, 1880s. Italia class 2 ships, rugged airliner, 3 ships, Duilio 2 ships. Enormous turrets and midships, with fighting ships. 1860 to 1905. Cool. Bertrand's 21st birthday. You've been paying way too much attention to US culture. Well, the thing is, in the UK, usually you've graduated university as well at 21. And in America, you've probably got similar skills. So, yeah. I'm thinking this is the sort of point at which, honestly, I love teaching them, and I do teach 18-year-olds quite a lot, but there is a huge difference between my 18-year-olds at university and my 21-year-olds. So I know in America it's 21 and you can drink and those sort of things, and in Britain it's 18, but I would say, practical experience probably is 18 in both countries. But let's be honest, in practice, in the 21 is a point at which you've reached the level of maturity. Peter Dawson, talking about warships, didn't most US presidents look for aircraft carriers, but Trump wanted comfort and mercy? Possibly because they're viable ships for the president's missions. Shermack, our submission is still open because I started mine but never finished. Technically closed, but we might well be we'll be running it again at some point. We'll work through the first set, and then we might if we manage to get through the first set of 9 in about the first 6 months of the year, then we'll do another one for the next 6 months of the year, basically. Vision, US Navy battleships from the hour to connect with a mix of British and French design influence. Same for armor cruisers like New York and Brooklyn. Let's be honest, there is a far more heavier British influence than there is French. Have a look at those designs. And saying this, that would go so badly with US public opinion, unfortunately. It might, though. But I have an idea for how we could get around it. Give the Queen a new corgi as well. So you could basically say it's his new present is to give people dogs. That's his new style of gifts. So he gives the Queen a corgi. He gives Putin a husky. Gives Macron... Well, I have a poodle, a little poodle. God has to give Merkel a German Shepherd. Not sure what you'd give Trudeau. St. Bernard. He can't turn it down. It's a gift from the President of the United States, and it will ruin all his couches. It's the perfect fun gift for Bordrura. Oh, that's cool. That's kind of a gag gift, but let's be honest. And then you'd have to work out who was the Australian president at the time, who was the New Zealand lady's not going anywhere, so she could do with a dog. She's just had a baby though, so not something too massive and good with kids. Yeah. Jermac, another topic. Are there any interesting stories of the US diplomatic service during the Great White Fleet voyage? Any ambassadors losing their mind in preparation for arrival, sending consuls to places without them? No, the consuls. Roosevelt went to great effort to make sure the ambassadors and the consuls were well prepared. They organized it very, very heavily, so they were well looked after. They had lots of support when they arrived, and it was good for them. Actually, there's a lot of critics here, but there is one good advantage for naming a ship after Donald Trump. You get the USS Trump, so you get to play the Trump card. Come on, that's it's worth it for the name alone. Trudeau gets a Newfoundland. Merkel is terrified of dogs. I didn't realise that, Tom Scolding. Perhaps give her a cat then. Boris Johnson has a cut dog, and it's usually if you're going to give it to the heads of state, that's the thing. Andrew Benton, please no, my taxes pay for those couches. Oh. 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 Inquisitor Jackknife, evening and groan. You know, Trump card. I couldn't resist. Actually, I do wonder if the lovely policy which the US Navy is currently getting back to of naming submarines after fish again and naming frigates after something after decent animals, decent things, and whether that might affect carriers, and you might end up with, I don't know, carriers named for things like they used to. You might end up with a Saratoga, a Lexington, a Ranger again. You might even end up with the carrier I really wanted to happen but didn't happen, the Constellation. I want a USS Constellation aircraft carrier. I think it would be an amazing thing to have. In card, Johnson's dog is a mongrel. Then in the UK, we tend to call them Heinz 57s. There's nothing wrong with that. It's an adopted dog. It's cool. Chipmunk, Bunker Hill. Constellation, please. Yes, there are so many good names the US Navy has in its history which are not being used. It's kind of like that, and in a nicer way, if they need to borrow some, the Royal Navy has plenty they're not using at the moment. And it's more fun. Alright, so part 2. So here is the route of the Great White Fleet versus the route of the Empire cruise. And as I said in Long Patrol, what is interesting is the places they don't visit as much as the places they do visit. Where does the British fleet visit? Where does the American fleet visit? And let's point out here, where does it stop? New Zealand, British colony. Australia, British colony. Then it goes up to sort of Japan. Then it stops in Ceylon and Singapore, British colonies. Goes through the Suez Canal and stops in Egypt, British colony. Gibraltar, British colony. These are the major stops it does once it gets out of the Americas. Now, what is interesting is there's also all the routes which the cruisers are doing in terms of the Royal Navy's, in terms of the Empire cruise. There's the capital ships, the battle cruisers, where they go. There's where the light cruisers go. And there's where the combined squadrons operate. And light cruisers go around South America, stopping off in many of the places, same places the Great White Fleet did, which is the British showing their commerce warfare capability. And it's the interesting thing is, where do they not stop? Where do they not visit? They sail right by German-controlled colonies in Southeast Asia. They sail right by German colonies in Africa. They don't stop in them. There is something me and Drac talk about a lot when we're talking about deterrence and we're talking about presence mission. There's the fact that when you're sending a large fleet around the world, it doesn't go and do visits with your opponents. It goes and does visits with your friends. It sails past your opponents within the same area as them, so they'll see you. It's individual ships, it's sloops, it's an individual cruiser, which will go and do the port visits with the powers who you might end up having issues with. Partially because that means you don't look so as threatening, but also partially because of this problem that if you show up with too much force, if you show up with not enough force, you look weak. If you show up with such a small amount of force, it looks like you're basically going, I see you, but I'm not bothered by you. You look strong. And you can turn up with overwhelming force, and then you look strong. But what have you won? So, the Great White Fleet versus the Empire cruise. There is a difference. But there is also a striking similarity in their routing. There is a striking similarity in what they're doing. And again, what is interesting? The British fleet doesn't visit Japan. The Great White Fleet is a period when you've got an alliance coming, and I would argue you have an alliance almost between all three nations at that point. Because the American fleet does visit Japan, which is a growing power, but hasn't yet achieved power status. And they're visiting lots of British-controlled harbours, although they're not visiting Britain, and they're going around the world. The Empire fleet, Empire cruise, visits America, visits Canada, goes all the way around the Empire, the long way. Doesn't visit Japan. Japan, the Great White Fleet gets an interesting reception in Japan. It does. It gets well received in Japan. Shelby 42, wasn't Japan a British ally at the time as well? Yes, it was. And guess who helped arrange for there to be such a good reception in Japan for the Great White Fleet? British diplomacy assisted. American diplomacy was stretching and doing full effort, but British diplomacy was also making sure ways were smoothed. Why does Britain want allies? Why does Britain want America and Japan to get along? Because here's the thing. If America and Japan are friends and they're not competing with each other, then whilst they will build strong fleets, they won't build in massively strong fleets. Which means Britain doesn't have to start factoring them into countering their numbers. And that is always a thing. Two-power standard, remember? The last thing Britain needs is to have two powers who are having a naval race. And so Britain's drawn into a naval race because they have to build as many as both those two powers combined. They are trying to make friendships work here. Captain Seafoot, how does the Great White Fleets compare with the Flying Squadron circumnavigation in 1869 and 70? Again, not too dissimilar in route. There are similarities going on here. Schumach, I imagine they might have gotten closer to the coast when they go by the German colonies. Well, you know, navigation is not as precise in that time. It's not GPS. Seeing like the Eastern Pacific was ruled by the USA even back before the Civil War. Reason for the occupation of Hawaii: Pacific coast of USA sealed by Alaska as its Mare Nostrum. I'm not really sure you can say that. I think they more dominate in the Eastern Pacific because no one else is there. That's the thing. They don't really rule it. They're just the only ones there. Oh. Tian Wong. Hello, Dragon. Golden Dragon. Yes, this was the one made by Hood and Repulse. Empire Cruise. Reading about history of US-Japan relations written in the 1920s is utterly depressing. Oh, we're such good friends. Yeah. Ian Carr, Empire Cruise does not appear to go through the Mediterranean. Oh, I wonder why. Again, what is Britain sailing around the world? Battle cruisers. America is sailing its battle fleet around the world. Everyone knows Britain has a battle fleet. They just took part in the Battle of Jutland. The Grand Fleet happened. World War I happened. Everyone knows Britain has a battle fleet. But there's been a problem with battle cruisers. And Britain is demonstrating, well, not only does it have battle cruisers, but it's showing them why it has battle cruisers. Like America is showing them why it has battleships. They can turn up and have a fight with you anywhere in the world. The British are saying, we can go anywhere in the world and take out your trade. We will have a battle cruiser there, and we will have a squadron of light cruisers. The light cruisers will hoover up your merchant ships. And if it turns out you have any of those nasty little ships in there out to try surface raiders, out to try and take them, don't worry, there'll be HMS Hood or Repulse or Renown to come say hello and embrace it in a warm collective hug of seamanship. Otherwise known as 15-inch guns or 16-inch guns. We just want to be your friends with high explosive. Voila. Carlson, re-selling out a ship in a crisis works only if you showed up early with a huge fleet in peacetime. It works if they know you have a huge fleet. You don't necessarily need to have shown up with a huge fleet in peacetime. It works if they know you have a huge fleet elsewhere. Oh, so maybe US-UK diplomatic history in 1920s isn't depressing, but otherwise, yeah. Yeah, there's all sorts of interesting things going on there. Golden Dragon, or Tian Wong, how does Great White Fleet compare with Operation Sealbit? I cannot remember the route from the top of my head as Operation Sealbit. I'd have to look that up another time. Later, long-range snow flights of interwar era and latest US Air Force SAC bomber navigations may be nice things for comparison to the Great White Fleet and Empire cruise. Well, I was talking about the show flights of the interwar era in the submarine videos. Animals, an interesting topic, but might be pre-industrial navigation. Vikings had sunstones. The Portuguese, the sextant, but how did the Polynesians do it? Shomak, you mean protect British trade? The British didn't commerce raid. No, the British just hoovered up everyone else's trade. They didn't so much commerce raid as commerce wipe out. It's called economic warfare. Our trade will get through, your trade will become our trade. Anos, blockade, not commerce raid. No, you don't blockade neutral ports. That causes war. So you have to hoover up the trade once it goes out to sea if it tries to get home. Because if it doesn't try to get home, it ends up getting interned in the neutral power. Animus, arm piercing is probably not what you probably what you mean. What about AP? I was going for high explosive. William Cox, we're low on main battery rounds, so we'll salute you torpedoes. It works. But as Kai just put it, long-range commerce interdiction. This is a very large long-range commerce interdictor. But the idea basically was, if you were faced with a scenario like the Graf Spee in the South Atlantic, there would be light cruisers going around and hoovering up merchant ships, and there would be this thing, probably with Eagle, which did join them for parts of the cruise, and it was sort of tangentially around, or another of the carriers doing search and reconnaissance for it, tracking down the merchant raider, and then once it was found, the surface raider. Hello! We would like to introduce you to some very friendly, high explosive, and yeah, you can't run away from us. Rick Vasa, how did the Americans manage to keep all their sailors in check at all the ports of call so as not to commit one international incident after another? Well, two ways. One, they were very, very strict with them, and two, their consular officials basically camped out in the local police stations. It tends to work. And as Bitchon points out, there were instances of Great White Fleet, a big fight in Chile, if I recall correctly. There were some of them, yes. It didn't always work. Mm-hmm. Death Squad. No, but the RN did politely encourage everyone else in the world to find more profitable contracts than trading with the Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Yes, they bought them. They basically would, instead of impounding them, would go, hello, you're going to trade with who? Yes. How much are you going to pay for it? Yes, we'll double that. We basically spent the whole of World War One buying anything Norway tried to sell. It was quite embarrassing, really. So you can see why the USN jumped from Langley to Lexington and Saratoga so quickly. It's being very friendly. You do not need to suddenly have a large aircraft carrier because the Royal Navy has this to come and say hello. And let's go back to this one. Let's check one of the points where it stops off. Please note, where does the Royal Navy visit? Oh, yes. They visit Hawaii. The Empire cruise stops off in Hawaii. So, here is the international relations impact. Dear Will, one closing legacy. Under no circumstances divide the battleship fleet between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans prior to the finishing of the Panama Canal. This is Teddy Roosevelt talking to successor William Taft on the final day of his presidency on the 3rd of March 1909. This is his letter to him. What was the international relations impact of the Great White Fleet? It was America's here. How would I put this? There are people who date America becoming a world power and recognize such to the Spanish-American War. There are people who try and date it back to the War of 1812. There are people who try and date it back to the American Revolution and War for Independence. I would argue every single one of them is wrong. Up to that point, the biggest power America's really able to fight is one which is considered by this point a third-rate, if not a fourth-rate power in terms of Spain, because they have slipped that much. At one point, their former colonies have more warships than they do. And better, newer warships built in Britain, usually. But after this, there's no question anymore. America is a world power. Not World War One. When World War One happens, just think about nations. Are they talking about America as a new nation to come across, or are they expecting America to come and take part because it's in America's freaking interest to get involved in this war and end it as quickly as possible because everyone's going poor in wartime apart from them, and that means they've got no one to trade with? This is the point. You can sit out of war and say, I'm making profits by selling to these countries. That's great, but the longer the war goes on, the less likely they are to buy stuff afterwards, which means you go bust. Because you've built your economy around selling all the things to them. So, and the reason I was talking about high explosive earlier when talking about Hood or Repulse and Renown bashing into things is because surface raiders usually are light cruisers or converted merchant ships. In other words, you don't need armor piercing for them. As for the Graf Spee, okay, armor piercing would be nice and would certainly work. And how much damage you would do with high explosive, I'm not sure, but you would probably wipe out the bridge and pretty much everything which wasn't heavily armored. And you'd probably cause enough damage that you stop the guns working. So it would be a burning hulk by the time you finished, whether you used armor piercing or not, if you've got guns that big. Mm-hmm. Cahedron. Heck, weren't we buying most of it on credit World War One? Not really. Actually, World War One, you don't really start using credit till 1917, 1918. It's going to sound strange again. British had huge amounts of gold reserves, huge amount of financial reserves, and were able to raise large taxes. And again, you always have to remember World War One, and this is going to sound terrible. The British economy doesn't suffer in any way as much as it does in World War Two. Yes, they are doing a war economy, and yes, they are doing. They have to deal with the submarine threat. But a submarine threat is nowhere near as strong as it is in World War Two. And even World War Two, it's not defying. And you have to remember that the rest of the empire is unscathed pretty much by the war. Which means for them it's economic production as normal. Whereas in World War Two, you have a far wider conflict in terms of the actual fighting for the length of the war. Whereas in World War One, you think about it, it's a world war, yes, but after 1914, 1915, how much fighting is there going on in the rest of the world? That's not either in the Middle East, which were not British colonies anyway, they were part of the Ottoman Empire, or is in places, again, which are all Axis territory. Think about it. Is Singapore involved in fighting a war, or is it part of the Britain still providing money to the coffers? It is. Australia and New Zealand, are they directly threatened at this point? Nope. India, directly threatened at this point? Nope. Burma? Nope. Anywhere in North Africa, Suez Canal, etc.? No. So there's still lots of money coming in. The RR impact, as said, for the Great White Fleet is that it announces that America is now on the world stage. Vision, US Super Dreadnought design was very much influenced by Great White Fleet crews. Higher freeboard and guns placed in superstructure. It makes sense. Means they work. Vision, many US Navy admirals of World War II sailed with the Great White Fleet early in their careers, including Senator John McCain's grandfather. Yes, because they were picking the best and the brightest. It works. Oh. William Cox, small rephrase on that one, I'm afraid. Remember, it might be accurate, but they watch certain words, so I would use the phrase pillaging. They don't mind that word. Dirt Squad, Carl Gosberg, and anything that you should sacrifice against doesn't have enough armor to make Hesh worthwhile because you won't get the spawning effects that make Hesh effective. Carl Harmon, Britain should do a world tour to say hello, we're back. Well, we've all said that Queen Elizabeth's task group is deploying to the Far East. It's going to South China Sea. Has anyone said how it's coming back? We know it's going out through the Mediterranean and through the Indian Ocean and into the South China Sea. It's going to probably visit Australia at some point on the way. It's going to probably visit Singapore. It's going to visit, do some exercises with India and all these sort of things on the way. It's going to be a nice big procession out there. Probably will end up going across to Hawaii. Will it come back through the Panama Canal? Will it go round South America and go to see the Falkland Islands? Quite possibly. Who knows what this government will get up to, especially if they keep talking about global Britain. That'd be an easy way to do it. Have it come back via the Falkland Islands and global Britain. Jeff, the Great White Fleet doesn't not really visit Africa, unlike Teddy himself later. Yes, Teddy does like going to Africa. It's a nice way of getting the presence, and it's a nice way of announcing the capability of the fleet. And as we can see, here is the impact. Florida class, Wyoming class. Just have a look at those bow designs. Well, of course, again, 2022 is the 40th anniversary of the Falklands and the Falklands War. So having the fleet come back past the Falklands in 2022 would be possibly interesting. Peter Dawson, can the Queen Elizabeth to QE2 get through Panama? Surely it's too wide. Yeah, she can. Panamax. Now, it's an interesting scenario when you're looking at these ships because they can look very similar, but they're actually very different once you look at their hull forms and the way they're sighting their ship design and the way they're structuring themselves. Arkansas, Wyoming class, has a thicker beam, has a different shape of bow, has a more pronounced knuckle almost. It's capability. They're also still quite good-looking ships, let's be honest, both of them. Neither of them is exactly an ugly vessel. But you can see a very big movement in Arkansas versus Florida. In that Arkansas does look like... Well, to me, Florida looks like not as good a Dreadnought as Dreadnought. She just doesn't. But Arkansas looks like you're heading in the direction of the Queen Elizabeth class. Wyoming has an additional turret. Well, that helps. Having an additional turret does help. Also, and this is one of the other big design issues that they start to make after the fleet comes back, they start to put a lot more focus in crew comfort. Now, one of the interesting things is that you can argue that the US Navy of today has forgotten those lessons. In that the interwar years, the US Navy is the US Navy before World War One and into the interwar years up to about 1930, 1940-ish, is really pushing crew comfort and has some of the most spacious and spacious and most comfortable accommodations for its crew of any navy. Since then, you can argue that they've gone downhill in comparison, considering the way that the Constellation class frigates are currently being raved over for the US Navy because of, I think Constellation class, I think that's what they're going with for their new frigates, because of the accommodations they found on them. You sit there and go, those aren't even some of the better ones, and you're raving over it? Wyoming has a higher freeboard. Yes, it does. And William Cox, how wet were the sponsons forward? Not nearly as wet as the ones on the Florida class. Vision. Standard battleships took in the Great White Fleet experience the most. Better sea-keeping guns, high up for enough to fight in heavy seas, plus crew comfort. Yep. I would argue the standards were some of the best battleships designed in terms of balance for their period. They are overtaken by technology, but that happens when you're on the cutting edge of things. Visual. Current US ships sound like they have overcrowding issues from press reports. Well, that kind of ties in with the answer to Ian Carr's question. Is QE accommodation considered good? Similar crews must help. Yes, it is considered good, especially compared to USN ones. It's one of those reasons is automation allows them to have more space for that crew. But you have to remember, having a larger crew does provide you with assistance for battle damage repair. And it's one of those things, it's balancing the two. And I think possibly with the Ford class, they've been trying to recruit a crew, and they've had to add more people back in. And I think the thing they haven't done is, I think the thing the Americans needed to do was actually probably call up BAE and go, you know that that logistics management system you've built into the Queen Elizabeth class that moves all the ammunition around and sorts it all out automatically and reduces the crew requirements for that by hundreds of people. Yeah, can we have that, please? We'd probably gouge them on the price, but it would be whatever it would be, wouldn't worth it. Abazaski, US Navy first introduced air conditioning and refrigerators to their subs prior to World War II. That was insane at the time. Maybe there went the budget for torpedo testing. I'm not sure. I'd hope not. Make orders. Remember reading of US admirals touring one of the Spanish LPDs, I think, and commenting how comfortable for junior rates. I'm told QE 245 good, but needed for long tours. Yes, it is. Apparently, Niagara Falls was on the itinerary of the Special Service Squadron World Cruise 1923 to 1924. It also witnessed the scuttling of HMAS Australia. It was a sad part of the tour, that one. St. Kitts, why did US ships have large lattice mast towers? To absorb damage from shellfire or other reasons? It was felt that was stable and strong, and it would survive getting damaged, and it didn't any of those things. But that's what they did. Trent Lenko, Dr. Clark, when doesn't BAE gouge? To be fair, I'm trying to think of a defense contractor who doesn't. I think the last one who didn't was probably Vickers and Supermarine, and they would still have edged things, but there was and they did produce the 14-inch gun, so maybe they even got into it by the end. Come on. What would Argentina do if Britain sailed QE task force past Falklands and docked a decent amount near the Falklands in 2020 post-China deployment? Probably lodge a diplomatic protest and do absolutely nothing other than that. They can't do anything about it. Let's be honest, that amount of firepower turning up there, they're just going to go, we don't want you there, but we are going to keep well away from you and not going to do anything more because that is overwhelming firepower. Let's be honest, let's say it's just limited down to the British parts of the ships. You've got 2 Type 23s, 2 Type 45s, a Queen Elizabeth, and supply ships. That's a lot of firepower. Oh, and an Astute-class nuclear submarine, possibly, bottling around as well. Yeah. there is a case of people going, "Oh, why? Why would they? Can they retake the islands? Can they fire? If they fire missiles at Britain unprotested for Britain taking its ship to its own territory and its own islands to pay them a visit on the anniversary of the war, we might even be nice and invite an Argentinian ship to come over and say hello, just so there can be a picture of the one Argentinian ship surrounded by the British ones." It's a prestige effort, and it looks like a prestige effort. This is the point with the Great White Fleet. It is definitely about prestige. It is definitely about presence. It's definitely about talking diplomatically and internally. It's one of those operations which combines everything. The Great White Fleet allows the US Navy to test its operational capability to both support and conduct operations. It announces itself on the world stage, so it has a strategic and international relations edge. And it starts to wed and normalize the idea of US Navy ships wandering around the world in force in the minds of the populace of America. Scott, do you think the RN would try to help mend relations with the Argentine Navy by using their resources to help in the a Swan investigation? We were part of the search for it. We did a lot of stuff with the search for it when she first went down. So, you know, yeah. Carmen, I also agree with the Dragon and Peace paint schemes coming back on stipulation. HMS Dragon keeps a dragon, and Dragon should go to the Falklands in 2022 to remember it as Sir Galahad. Yes, I think Dragon might be part of a certain deployment shortly. Join Navy, see the world. That was always the thing. That was always the thing. That was what they were selling themselves as. That's what the Navy was about. Join it, see the world. And they would do a lot to see the world. They would show them the world. Right. Back in a second. Oh. Actually, while I'm gone, quickly, I will put on this again. Just to cover for the fact I'm gone. So that if anyone's interested, they can see my office. As you can see,
prices are going up.
This one is my sister's. She gets the one facing the house.
Probably I'll be putting the black bookcase up in that.
It's fun. Am I the only one with no audio? It should have audio going. If it doesn't have audio going, I'm sorry. It doubles me narrating and talking about various things during it. And no audio from the video. Damn. Sorry. Well, no, there's no audio this time. There's audio earlier. You think it's just very quiet? That's unusual with me. Done encounter. The video had very low audio. I do apologize. I could barely hear you speak at one point. Well, let's see. Let's add it back and see if I can't get it to work at least, or I can narrate it. If it then comes back and it's not working.
As you can see, the houses are going up. This one is my sister's. She gets the one facing the house. Quite a nice space. This one fairly thick.
Nice and thick.
Judging by the windows. Yowza.
Circle of Death.
Man. That's the space. Desk here, I think. Door's gonna go open outwards. Bookshelves, that wall, and possibly a bit up to the corner. I'm considering having a little line running around all the way along here below the window. Considering having that. But probably I'll be putting the black bookcase up in that corner.
Yeah.
On the desk here. So
It's gonna be fun.
Maybe not.
Hopefully Circle of Death is over
Maybe
now.
not. Maybe just a throw in the corner. It's gonna be fought. It's got plenty of space. I get not even just touch the ceiling if I jump. That's gonna be fun.
It is a cool space for me to work in. And this was, of course, the last video. I was prepared to put the video on then. Next week, of course, we have Sunday. It's Random History. And it's the Long Patrol Naval Paintings, as suggested by Brock Payne on the 26th. And then 28th, it's Royal Navy anti-ship piracy, anti-piracy operations of the 1920s and 30s in the Far East. I am focusing on the carrier ones, but also on the the submarine ones. Yes, submarines were used. And hopefully on the 31st of January, the first talk from the new office will be Brew Ships 35, some more transactions to the Institute of Naval Architects. Dope Squad, get a Lego train set. You can use it to move books from the shelf to the desk. Tempting, but I'm going for another engaged line. I can do more things, and I want to have bridges and things going up and over. There is going to be a huge painting of a tribal class destroyer in my office. I have the Altmark incident painting. There are several paintings which are going up in that space, and I know exactly where they're going. I know where I'm going to be putting up various things. I know where I'm going to put up the shelving. I've worked it all out. It's going to be nice. I know where's going what. The fact is, because the walls are quite so big, I'm going to have some paintings up above the windows, and it's going to be quite. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be really cool. See, Mike, where's the kitchen and wet bar for Iron Brew? I might put in a fridge there, but it will be one which my family do not know about, because if they find I put a fridge in there, they will be really they'll be really worrying about my obsession with Iron Brew. Ronan Cash is going to look like a bungalow version of Library of Alexandra. Well, basically, I'm building some huge bookshelves in there, and then I will still have these bookshelves up here, but I will have all my books on bookshelves, which is some region of over 1,000 books. And there are more arriving. There's actually a book which is supposed to arrive tomorrow, and there's another 3 books for book review which are supposed to be on their way. And yeah, I have a problem. Mirrors on the ceiling? No. Just be great. Great. Your sister will have better space when she's to work. Yes, but my sister has sort of disappointed me in that she's decided she's getting all her stuff because she wants an instant office, as I call it. She's buying her stuff from IKEA, whereas I'm building mine. Well, this I have to admit is coming with me, this particular piece of IKEA, but that's to have something in there from the get-go. It might end up returning back up here in time, I'm not sure. And this, my trusty desk, which I have had since I was 14, is going with me. It's about 40 years old, I think, this desk. It came off a skip at Kingston University. They were throwing it out, and I needed a desk at the time, and I went, that'll do. And my family was going, oh, you want to buy a new one on that? No, well, it's made of solid wood. It'll last for frickin' ever, and it has done. Jeff Beeler, what kind of internet connection? We're getting a hardwire out to there. I was asking, still have doubts it won't house all your books. I have those doubts as well. I know. That's why the bedroom's retaining the bookshelves. There'll be an office tour at every stage. At every stage, I will put little videos in at appropriate points in the lives to show what the office is like at that point. And I'm hoping that having an office down there is going to allow me to up my steps again, because I've gone from an average of 30,000 steps a day to an average of 8,000 steps a day, which is just not good. See, my IKEA is just an excuse to go and eat some meat, eat malls, that and the jam. It's just coming off the internet. It's not even. We're not even going there to visit anything. There is that, as I showed with one of the things in there, the wall is thick is going to have a huge amount of insulation in it. So it's going to have insulation, and then it's going to have another wooden paneling on it. It's got insulation under the floor, it's got insulation on the roofs, and then there's going to be the bookshelves built on top of that. It's going to have a lot of insulation. And the bookshelves are going to be thick. They're going to be Well, the lower shelves below the railway are going to be about 800 millimeters deep. The idea being they can store boxes of books which need to be protected from damp and made sure they're kept safe. So things like this probably, until I can get shelves up which can protect them, and then I can use those boxes for storing things like, I don't know, Christmas lights. I have packed up 24 sets of them. I've still got 12 sets which need to be packed up, and 4 of these out of the 32 which came out. Yeah. Strauss, do you have an office at King's? If you don't, I'd find it hilarious if they give you one once you're done. I don't have an office at King's. I have an office at Kingston, but I've emptied that. I've emptied all my temporary offices. Ryan Cash, the bookshelves are going to be thick. They are. They're going to be proper deep foot bookshelves. And the upper level ones are going to be 400 millimeters thick. So, basically, the idea being that at no point should I have a book which sticks out like this. At no point should any book be dangling in midair. So, at all points should they have plenty of space and plenty of depth for them. There are going to be ship models on display. There are going to be aircraft models on display at certain points. I'm going to build up slowly. It's going to slowly start to sort of look like my sort of space. I have got some big aircraft carrier models I need to build. I do have an HMS Ark Royal around somewhere, which will probably make it turn up. Very badly painted. It was one of the first ships I did, and the painting's terrible. I tried to do World War II camouflage of greens and things. Carl Harmon, ooh, you'll be live for my birthday in July. Ooh, probably will be. Lives are Thursdays and Sundays. Unless otherwise stated. And long patrols are Tuesdays. And the reason I do that is I have teaching Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and it just makes my life easier if Tuesday's pre-recorded. And then Thursday and Friday tend to be my research and writing days, so I can use those for a live quite easily. And Sunday tends to be my archive. Saturday tends to be my archive visit day, so doing brew ships on Sunday is nice because I spend the family pottering, the Sunday morning pottering around, looking after the family and checking the chores and making sure they're done. And then the afternoon I spend talking to all you about books. But I should probably say thank you to everyone for the super chats and the patron money, because that is heavily financing some of the ideas for the office. In that the bookshelves, the quality I'm planning on building and the wood I'm planning on using wouldn't really be possible without them, because on my budget I would have to be far more strict and probably cut the budget by half. Whereas because of the generosity of people, I've been able to go, I can buy the wood I really want to work with because it's the wood I'm most used to working with, and it's the best quality for this because it's going to keep its strength no matter what happens. It's going to protect the trains. It's going to protect the books, and it's able to be smoothed down so it's nice and smooth and it look after things. Gun. Yes, it's Thursday this year, and I have noticed you aren't live on Tuesdays now. Yeah, I've gone to long patrols. Let me just check something. Yeah, my birthday isn't on. My birthday continues the tradition of being on a weekday rather than a weekend this year, but it isn't going to be on a day when I'm live. Just. I doubt I'll be having a party, though. What's interesting to note is now that forever there will be more episodes of bilge pumps than my age. We have now been overtaken by bilge pumps. Very saucy. It'll be nice to go back to once the pandemic is over. No, I'm not a big fan of wandering around IKEA. I always get given the IKEA furniture to build, and then I get paid in Chinese takeaways. It's how it's a going rate with my friends. Chinese takeaway. I need all this furniture built. That will be 2 takeaways, or 1 takeaway. Be procured at your one while we're here, and one will be one while I'm assembling it, and one on a later date when you will treat me and I will have a nice food and will not have to be spending the whole evening building stuff. But it doesn't. What are you eating next Monday? I have no idea what's in the fridge next Monday. That's. I'm sorry. This is the state of my planning. Shopping has arrived on Sunday. Has it from the? Yes. What stuff actually came from the shops that was delivered on Sunday, and then we work out the meal. Schleppy 42. No Arc Raw, but I'm quite fond of my first ship model. Hey, not a normal one, but I like Pagoda masks. I think they look cool. They look cool, but I do worry about them. So one of my other things against the G3s and the N3s is they start to look like they had the British version of Pagoda masks. And you wonder what they would call on British ships, because in Japan they're called Pagoda masks, but what do you call it on a British ship? See what? There is a giant model of the Yamato in Japan. That's on my dream list, along with the Bismarck and Hood at the Imperial War Museum. But I think they'll be a tad too large. William Cox, what was the wear endured by the Great White Fleet ships like after? All engines worn out? Well, let's put it this way. About half had to be rebuilt and were used, and the rest became harbour queens for the rest of their days, because they were replacing them with various things, dreadnoughts. Come on, go live and have a party with us, or Discord video, voice call with us all. Tempting. Gadron, any specific dishes from the Chinese takeaway? I tend to find myself ordering salt and pepper chicken quite a lot these days. I have 2 dishes which I always tend to try when I'm in a Chinese takeaway for the first time. Salt and pepper chicken and sweet and sour chicken, because my theory is if they muck those up, then there's nothing else is going to be nice. So get out there quick. If they can do those okay, then everything else might be okay. Who doesn't? Nothing from Scotland. Oh, of course! Next Monday. We've already had haggis twice this year. Already. We might have haggis again. Well, it's tempting. We do tend to have a lot of haggis in my family. You see, other people just eat haggis on certain days of the year, Burns Night. And my family is quite happy chowing down on haggis in the middle of June. Much to my girlfriend's fear, I think. Chevy Fordoo, gotta be some form of chair sui from the Chinese takeaway. Captain Seafoot. British Pagoda. Queen Anne's Mansion, surely. Not really. Might be called Brighton Pavilions. Because the Brighton Pavilion has kind of similar architecture, so they might be called pavilions. or brightens. Runcash, it tends to be salt and pepper chicken I try before salt and pepper squid. I have to admit that I try the chicken first before I try the squid. Again, experiences. If you can't make the chicken, if you cut the chicken up and always cut the first one up, and it's pink on the inside, don't try the squid. If they can't get the chicken right, don't try the squid. Don't go for anything fancier. If they can't get salt and pepper chicken right, don't go for the squid. Don't go for anything else. Carmen, I may have to become a patron and try and win the vote for a live on my birthday and make a message. Golden Eagle. Alex, are you Scottish? I come from a very Scottishy family, but my accent, as you can tell, tells you I am not Scottish. I am from the home counties. Surrey, in fact. Born and raised. However, my family split between Cornwall and Scotland in equal measure, and when I go down to Cornwall, I develop a Cornish accent, so if I do one of these lives from holiday, you'll probably hear me start talking in a slightly Cornishy accent, and if I did it from Scotland, you'd hear me talking in a Highlands Glasgow accent. That does come on, and the Cornish accent, well, that goes sort of like that a bit. But it goes down. Jeff Hiller, Grass Bay and HMS King George V were my first two models. You could fit KGV's quad turrets on the Grass Bay for a what-if effect. Jeff Beeler, the only thing I can say is I'm so glad there are no Vickers salesmen of that period alive to hear you say that, because by gum, they'd have tried it. So you might gotta try haggis. Try iron brew bacon jam with it. It sounds weird, but actually iron brew and bacon jam is actually quite nice with haggis. Shemite, just finished evacuating all the undamaged aircraft from Luzon. It was a lost cause. Just needed to keep the air corridor open so that I could get some of the aircraft out of Hong Kong. Cool. USS Kearsarge was converted into crane ship in 1920, renamed crane ship number 1 in 1941, and sold for scraps in 1955. Longest career of any Great White Fleet ship. Yep. Carmen, I love Cornwall. My best friend is from Cornwall and off there next year. It is lovely. Cornwall is cool. And the Exeter University campus history course at Falmouth, the Falmouth campus, is absolutely brilliant. I've applied to be a lecturer there like 6 times because it is such a beautiful campus and it's such a good course and it's such a nice place to go and live and work. And people go, oh, but it's not the one at Cambridge or Oxford. It's not, near those centres. I go, I don't care. It's a great quality of living there. It's a great unit course. It's affiliated to Exeter University, so it's not exactly looks bad in your CV if you do feel like you're going anywhere elsewhere. The only problem is trying to get to anywhere to do research is going to be a bit of a hike, but conversely, you do get a lovely place to live. Joshua Peters, trouble getting haggis here in the States is the fact that FDA doesn't recognize a lot of offal cuts and meat, so you can't legally buy them. Roland Cash, sing us a corner she sang to you about tribals. Clark. Not here. Maybe when I'm in Cornwall. Tom's got him. My long suppressed Welsh accent always manages to escape after a few too many pints. Gotcha. Bacon jam. Yes. Iron brew and bacon jam. Jeff Beeler, were the 5.9-inch secondary guns really worth having, or would 4.1 AA guns have been a better idea? It depends what kind of fights you end up. If you think you're primarily going to be fighting the kind of war you find in the Pacific, where you're fighting against aircraft, and it's mostly air battles, you need more 4.1-inch air guns. If you find yourself fighting in the Mediterranean, then you're probably going to want a mixture of them. Cascadian, Clark, do you do any naval war gaming? Yes, I do. I do some. I don't do anything to the extent of what Drac does. I've been involved in wargaming at King's and various other universities, but I haven't had the need to, or really, it's going to sound strange. The joy of being dyslexic is you sometimes have to rationalize yourself and go, right then, it takes me extra time to do what other people can do in this amount of time. So what do I want to do? What do I really, really want to do? And what do I really need to do? And that's the list, and therefore they have them. So I haven't joined really societies outside of the universities, and I haven't developed my own collection like Drac has. So I'm a bit jealous of that. I'm going to have to start doing it at some point, but it's going to be when I have time and space for it. The moment I just have a huge collection of books and keep buying more. Shipy 42. Speaking of quads on grass speed, one of my favourite ships for giggles on here, Hearts Iron, is a 4, is a grass speed type thing with 2 quad 11 inches and anywhere between 29 and 32 knot speed. Why? Quad turrets are terrible. Okay, I know I talk about having a phalanx style 40mm and maybe having a couple of them set up on a turret. But that's 40mm. The moment you have a quad turret of a big gun, it gets incredibly complicated to manage the weights and the profiles and the balancing and the effect of firing the guns on the other guns. It's one of those things. It's sort of, if you've got a single gun, effect is doubled for two guns, so it's double the potential. That's not that much, so you can do it. You add a treble one, it's quadrupled the likelihood of damage. You have a quadruple gun, it's octupled the chances of damage. In that every time it's times another 2. So it's 2 to the power. Quadruple guns are not good. If you can't get a job at Exeter, the rest of us might not even bother. I've been trying for a couple of years now. For about, 4 years I've tried. Demon, I surprise Brits, Aussies, Kiwis, Americans in China with my PR BBC Newsreader English. Always good to have in the backups. Gotcha. No. What is bacon jam? I've made jam. How do you do that with bacon? You can make a jam with bacon in it. Oh, really? That's more my mum's recipe. My mum does the bacon and iron brew jam. I don't know. I've helped with it, but she's really the one who's the artist at it. My mum is absolutely amazing baker and really, really good cook when she can do it. It's one of the things that frustrates her at the moment because the house is a bit of a mess and her hips are hurting her more than they used to. So at some point, I've got to persuade her that I've got to start ripping out cupboards and start rearranging them and rebuilding them so they will help her, or I've got to find the money to pay for a company to come in and do it. She won't let me do it because she wants it done she wants it done by a professional, rather than me going, I think this will work. Most of the time I'm right and it does work, in my defense, but I do admit that I'm not a professional. Okay, Adrian, you can never have enough books. Agreed. Shumi, I think you broke him. That was the 4 quadruple 11-inch guns. Come on, got McDonald's now. Sad. Don't make me hungry. So far today, I've had KFC. That's been my lunch, and that's because we've had fun all day with our cooker because the electric's being taken off and on while they're putting the starting to put it in towards the shed. So, a joy of having an electric cooker. Carl has one. 2 quad 11-inch on a heavy armor cruiser hull. Beam length ratio. There's just, yeah. Carmen, slice up very small piece of bacon. I think that is involved. There are a little piece of bacon in there. There's also sort of bacon paste, I think, mixed into it, which is done with the my mum has a sort of shredder thing she uses. I forgot what it's called now. Not the mixer. Sheppy 42. Yes, quad 11s are a bad idea, but it's funny. And to be honest, they work on it okay in a video game land. In video game land only. Carmen, if you want, I can see if I can pull strings from my dad's workplace. They make worktops. If I end up doing it, I might well ask you, Carl, to help me track down a reasonably priced worktop for her. But I will be probably doing the cupboards at that point. We have electric cookers because my mum is a asthmatic, so gas cookers really not good for them. Which is why I love it when I'm away in places and I'm away from family and I can have a gas cooker and I can do all the things you can't do with an electric cooker, like flambe and all sorts of things, because you cannot light anything alight on top of an electric cooker. It just doesn't work. Paul Ketchum, honestly, if you want the worst, again, Hearts of Iron naval design, consider how most people build heavy cruisers. 4 8-inch guns and 24 6-inch guns with no armor. Well, if you're lucky and always manage to get the first rounds in, you... No, it wouldn't work. It would not work at all. 24 6-inch guns. What do I have? 8 triple or 4 quad or 6 quadruple mounts? That's what they do. They have double 8-inch at either end in the A and X mounting, quadruple 6 in the B and X, B and Y mounting, and then 2 quadruple 6s either side. How does that even work? I'm not sure. Cascadian, lattice miles, yes or no? Not if you paid me. Just recently seen an article about problems of 4-inch gun, 4-gun, and quadruple gun turrets torsioning the hull. Yes. Yacht Dagger. Sextuplet 1650s for the Chillons. That's someone who wants to destroy their own battleship. Yeah, feel like you see some bizarre creations on Ultimate Admiral's YouTube channels, especially if you if your non-gamer housemate creates them. Ooh. Hmm. Gotcha. 12 twins along the sides. God, Jager, you're scaring me now. I was asking, a 6-gun turret, what could go wrong? I know you're asking it as a joke. I've seen the smiley face. But, so I'm going to do a wave, because that's what I tend to do when there's emoticons. But, let's see. So I said 1. That's 1, and it's to the power of 2, right? So it gets doubled times by 2 when it's 2. So it's 2, it's double the damage. 3 is 4. 4 is 8. 5 is 16. 6 is 32 times the amount of damage. That's the rough rule of thumb my dad used to go on about. Loudly and longly. Then again, why are people trying to break the good doctor? Poor man. It's not trying to break me at this moment, it's just breaking me. Right. I'd say it is almost 9:30, so I'm going to go get some food because I am starving. As I said, I only had KFC for lunch, so I'll finish off questions and then I will go. But thank you for bearing with me through I think we only had one Circle of Death this evening, and that was when I was playing around with videos. Jebby, why did the Kearsarge and Virginia classes keep their double-decker turrets? It seems to me better to reduce top hamper for one. Loading practices. Vision, so Dr. Clark, what about new spaceport in Port Cornwall? Red Britain is working on a nuclear space rocket too. We're always working on a nuclear space rocket, and it's cool to have have it in Cornwall. It's basically giving some well-deserved money to the area. Sure. I suppose I shouldn't tell you about the cruiser carriers that the World Sea community loves for some reasons. Oh, tell me about them another time when I've had some food and I can cry into my pillow. Or when I'm in my office and I can walk outside and scream so that my neighbors think something weird is happening. That is going to be the fun. Being able to open the door, walk outside and go, ah! And just watch all my neighbors' lights go on going, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Then sneak back in and close the blinds. What is the next Brew Ships topic? Random history, which hopefully will include some of the books which are supposed to arrive. And the reason it's random history is because this weekend my sister is moving in some of her office stuff to her office. So basically I decided I needed Saturday and Sunday kind of free, so I'd go for random history. But the 31st is some more transactions at the Naval Institute of Naval Architects. So it's going to be some fun times. All right, take care. So, thank you, John Shea. Thank you, Sean Mack. Thank you, Bijan. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Jess P. Thank you, Golden Eagle. Thank you, Anime Sunglasses. And Derp Squad and Dunrick Ironhammer and DGB40, Carl Harmon, Shane F. Thank you. Take care. Vision. Thank you. Space Pirates of Cornwall. Always fun. Yogi Khan. Thank you. Schleppy22, thank you. John Hargrave. I have stood near a 155mm when being fired. It took me about an hour for my ears and stomach to recover. Big guns push such force into the mounting. It is so destructive. Yep. You can basically build a treble to work. A quadruple, no. All right. Take care, Steam White and Derp Squad and Albertsaski. Yickers, thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone. Adrian, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Shanak, thank you. Godshaga, thank you. Roland Cash, thank you. Basically, thank you, everyone. And I hope you've had a nice time. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you, as always, for all the super chats. Thank you, as always, for all the patrons. Thank you for being at the Discord. Thank you for liking or subscribing or doing both. And thank you for everyone who's a patron. It's all it's all lovely. And as I've shown you with the office, it's having a really big impact because it's what's going to allow that office to be the full space it can be as quickly as it's going to be. Thank you, Cascading, and thank you, Mateus Savik, and Carl Harmon, thank you, and Captain Z4, thank you, and Paul Ketchum, thank you. Paul Ketchum, thank you for emphasizing with our pain at video game unrealism. Yeah, it's disturbed me for the rest of the evening now. Thank you, and take care. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Ron Cash.